Those sugar-free products that you're buying to stay healthy, it turns out that they might not be as beneficial as you think.
Consumer Reports looks at why experts are raising concerns about sugar substitutes showing up in surprising places.
You expect to find artificial sweeteners in diet soda, but in English muffin or chicken nuggets?
People undoubtedly are eating more of these sweeteners than they realize as they make their way into foods like microwave popcorn and chicken nuggets.
Trisha Calvo, a health journalist with Consumer Reports, says sugar substitutes are now in a variety of everyday foods: microwave popcorn, breakfast cereal, ketchup, marinated meats, and many of us don't even realize we're consuming them. While they help cut calories, new research suggests potential risks. A recent French study found people consuming the amount of artificial sweeteners in just about a half a can of diet soda had a 13% higher cancer risk. Other studies link these substitutes to increased risks of heart disease, diabetes, and depression.
Even newer natural sweeteners like monk fruit or stevia aren't necessarily safer. They really haven't been studied very well.
The food industry maintains these sweeteners are safe. The Calorie Control Council, an industry group, says they, quote, provide the texture, taste, convenience, and quality that manufacturers need and consumers want. So, what can you do to keep all the sweeteners in check? Experts recommend focusing on whole foods, fresh fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. When buying packaged foods, don't just check the nutrition facts, scan the ingredients list for sweeteners. And if you're craving something sweet, reach for natural options like fruit instead of processed treats. Small changes like these can help limit your exposure to sugar substitutes.
The list of sugar substitutes is long and confusing, but Consumer Reports has made it easier to identify them when shopping. For a complete list you can download and take along when shopping, just visit our website, fox5vegas.com.